A very good evening to distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I want to welcome you on behalf of... I'm going to start right now. I want to believe that it's been a fine evening of great conversation so far. But we'd like to call...
is quite a good concept of the growth of this nation from its early formations to the present day. And I really want to commend Wiebe for taking time to put this work onto paper. Going through the archives, there's a lot of research material here. One gap in our development is the scarce information available about our history. It's not always a pleasant history, but it's our history. This is something that we cannot shy away from. And the more the actors put pen to paper to tell their stories, the better our nation would be for it. Wiebe, I want to thank you for giving me the honor of writing the foreword to this book. I enjoyed reading it first, and I really want to commend it to each and every one of us here and the wider Nigerian audience. Again, I thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for giving me this space. Thank you.
During your backsliding, something get back to me. In the 1980s, we were in Bariwa College. We used to leave our schools to go to ABU to see you do for socials. So now you are here today. Anyway, it's a pleasure for the Nigerian Football Federation to identify with this great work by our good friend, Mr. Wiebe. And I think we are not just taking the work he has done by trying to get the history, but from our perspective, we are trying to learn something from there, because something have left us. Because we can use the book now to look back and look at where we started and where did we get it wrong and where did it left us. Because our football, anybody will agree to that, will be much, much, much better than where it is today. We should be taking our football in terms of the jobs we are creating, the GDP, the economy, and stuff like that, because that is what the other people have done. Because they build on their history, they build a sustainable football structure. So we must congratulate the author for giving us this benchmark, which we will now learn to move forward. If now, for example, we ask everybody here, everybody will tell me he's Man United, he's Arsenal, he's what have you and what have you. But nobody have sit down to think, how did they get here? What did they do to get where they are today? We have all the platforms, we have all the ingredients to be able to even do much better than where they are today. But we left it somewhere. And it's through the history we can learn where we left it and what we need to do today to get it sorted. When all the issues we had in our football today, they have it over there as well. But today, because the football is so important in the UK, for example, the Prime Minister has to meet monthly with the head of the football authorities to discuss, is there any issue to be sorted? What is the issues? What can we do to make sure this will continue to work? Because it's no more a football to them. It's no more a game to them. It's an economy. It's something they are keeping their economy together. And that is what the focus we need to use to change our football and our thinking of football in this country. In the UK today, every week they have 3 million people that travel around the UK to watch football. They spend money, they buy fuel, they stay in hotels, they do all kinds of things. That is the way to distribute wealth and to make people happy. Today, if you go and remove football from the UK, I don't know how many people would die, because the youth will carry their guns and start shooting everybody. But because of the football, they are all looking to the next weekend where they will go and have fun, where they will go and enjoy themselves, where they will support their team. Everybody is being in the right state of mind to make sure he contributes positively to the economy. Premier League is watched over 700 million houses across the globe. There's no promotion the UK will get more than that. And we have seen what we can achieve with our World Cup jerseys. As I'm coming here, I received the message from GQ. They have voted Nigerian jersey once again as the best among the 132 countries. This is one tiny thing that we can be able to achieve with our football to make it work. But because we have lost the history and we did so many things wrong before, that's why we are here today. If in those days the Abiola Bears, the 3SC, the stationery stores have put the structures put the sustainable structures in place where there will be an institution, not just an individual clubs. So by today, there will be clubs, there will be things that will be moving our country, and we'll be counting how many jobs we are putting on the table and what have you. So today, I'm proud to say I'm the chairman of the Premier League. For 4 years, there was no football in Maiduguri until we come on board. Now they play football in Maiduguri. 20,000 people. 20,000 people would gather in Maiduguri to watch football week in, week out, and there's no problem. And one of my greatest happiness was there was a match that was played, Kano Pillars, Elkenemi Warriors. There were more than 30,000 in the stadium and more than 50 outside because it's a local derby. Everybody was happy, everybody was supporting the club. Their captain is Chinedu Ojoji. Their people were all from the southern Nigeria. Only 1 or 2 are from Kano. The entire place from Elkenemi Warriors are not from Maiduguri. They are all from all over the country. Only 1 or 2 is from Maiduguri. But the fans adore them, love them, and we are cherishing them. Anybody mess up with any of those players is on his own. That is the beauty of what this football can do for Nigeria. And therefore, we need to take it much, much serious. Not just a game. It's no more a game, it's an economy. And I can congratulate the federal government for what they are doing at this moment. There is is being now to be recognized in Nigeria as a national asset. Because it's our national asset. It breaks all our fault lines. It makes us to be one. Now we are going to the World Cup. Nobody is counting how many players are from here or from here. If it was a football, doesn't have those fault lines. So it's something we need to build on, and we need to work and get that done. And it is this work that is being done by our good friends that will give us a platform to see how we can move forward. FIFA, to make sure it's the FIFA Museum. And those that have the heirs of the authorities and the decision makers, that they got their GDP, 1.2 euros for Real Madrid and Barcelona. Those 2 football clubs. The biggest employer of labor, with the biggest driver of our GDP, if we get it right. And I thank you for this work you do, and we can build on that to make sure this happens. Thank you very much.
Let's put our hands on the economy and not just a game. We thank you for those remarks. All right. A lot of you might not, but then it was just an academic material. To convert it from a PhD thesis into what it is today, he's had the support of great editors and partners, but it's my honor to welcome the publisher to deliver his remarks, Mr. Bankole Olayebi, who's the publisher of Bookcraft Limited. Let's
The publishers of this book, when it first came, and Wiebe said he'd done his doctoral thesis on the history of football in Nigeria, and he would like to publish. I said, what? Doctoral thesis on football in Nigeria? Let me take a look. And when we started working on it, it became obvious almost immediately that it was something that had to be put out there. We managed to convince him that we needed to get across to an audience beyond an academic one. And so we managed to get some photographs in the book. But beyond that, for us, the material was very compelling. And I think the gentleman who spoke a short while ago, sorry I didn't catch his name, mentioned something about history. And for me, that's what was most compelling about this. There's a cliche. If you don't know where you're coming from, you cannot determine where you're going to. And we tend to live in the moment. So we don't quite know how we got where we are at this point. And for me, Wiebe did an excellent work in this book, just documenting the facts, the figures, and the history of this great sport we all love. And I want to congratulate him and thank him for letting us be part of this glorious day today. I would like to urge you to please buy at least 2 copies, not 1, 2 copies. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everybody. In Nigeria, football is everywhere. From dusty fields to grand stadiums, from street corners to boisterous bars, The game is played, discussed, debated, and supported with a fervor reserved for little else. But there was a beginning, a time before it became the national sport, which has played a vital role in the creation and development of the Nigerian national identity. The story of heroes and epics is an in-depth examination of this history and a narration of the people, places, and events that acted to promote the game to its level of popularity in Nigeria. A book about the history of football must accomplish two things. The first is the gathering, organization, and verification of the historic facts of football history, a daunting task given the appalling lack of documentation of Nigerian history. The second is the telling of these facts in a way that brings the stories to life. These events, when they happened, were moments of excitement and exhilaration. A book about them, then, must not be a dry recitation of facts, but narratives brimming of life. Thankfully, the author achieves both expertly. The book begins with a look of the origins of football in Calabar, where Presbyterian missionaries introduced the game to secondary school children. The first recorded organized game happened in 1904. From there, football found its way to Lagos, carried by the flocks of people who headed to the new capital of the Southern Protectorate. In Lagos, Frederick Baron Mulford steps to the fore of the narrative with his work popularizing and organizing football, earning him the names Baba Eko and Father of Football. The book then takes a jaunt to northern Nigeria, where a similar story plays out, and from there, details of the game's growth in Warri, Enugu, Ijebu-Ode, and beyond are revealed. The history covered, the book then delves beneath the surface to offer a detailed analysis of the effect football has had on shaping the Nigerian nationality. The history itself was an impressive feat, but for the reader, this is where the book becomes a smorgasbord of intriguing revelations. Football was introduced by British missionaries, while sports such as polo and cricket were introduced by the colonial officials and military officers. The British promoted these other sports to Nigerians, but it was football which caught on and spread like wildfire. Polo became a sport reserved for the elites. Cricket, thankfully, some might say, eventually lost its popularity. Football, more than any other organized sport, was cheap and easy to set up. All you needed was a ball and an open field. Another gripping insight comes from learning that these sports were introduced and promoted as a means of promoting British values. One must appreciate the irony of the game then being hijacked by Nigerians and pressed into service as both a means of anti-colonial protest and a nation-building mechanism. The story of the spread of football in Nigeria, how it grew from Calabar to permeate every corner of the country, is told with deftness. Reasons for this rapid dispersion are traced to inter-school and inter-region matches. Colonial institutions also played a vital role in the prominence of football. Employees of the Nigerian Police Force, the Public Works Department, the Nigerian Railway, and the non-commissioned officers and men of the National Regiment, Nigerian Regiment, took the sport with them wherever they went across the country stationed. Dr. Wiebe Boer then gives attention to the rise of football as an organized sport. By the 1930s, football had already grown to be a national obsession, and various leagues and tournaments were being organized. In 1933, the Nigerian Football Association, NFA, was established with the goal of supporting the development of football associations across the country. As an organized sport, football became the most prominent and important sport in Nigeria. A surprising leader of this movement was Nnamdi Azikiwe, a star player in the Lagos League at the Lincoln University, who established a network of athletic clubs in Lagos and around the country. During World War II, he organized 2 football goodwill tours across the country to raise money for the war effort, while also giving lectures about democracy and independence. The roles of Nigeria's founding fathers in the development of the game are also highlighted, including Obafemi Awolowo, Tafawa Balewa, and Ahmadu Bello. The establishment of the Governor's Cup by Governor General Otto Richards in 1945 was the final piece that transformed football into a truly national affair. The Cup played a huge role in fostering community spirit, and a recognition and acceptance that Nigerians were part of the same nation. And Nigeria will need this solidarity, as the next step was for the country to join the international football community. Wiebe chronicles how this happened and the role football played in shaping Nigeria as an emerging nation. Nigerian soldiers stationed in India and Burma during World War II first brought international attention to the potential of Nigerian football through success in military leagues. This was followed by a tour of England in 1949, during which the Nigerian national team enjoyed some success against lower-level league and semi-professional English teams. The team included Captain Etim Enshaw of Marine, Teslim Thunder Balogun, who would later play for Peterborough, and QPR, and Titus Okere, who returned to England in 1952 and became Nigeria's first professional player. John Dankaro of Takum, now Taraba State, a tin mining executive and star of the league in Plateau Province, was the only team member from northern Nigeria. The book then traces various Nigerian teams as they competed on the international stage and the enormous excitement and interest that followed the teams who were seen to be representing the entire country. The journey, of course, had its ups and downs, climaxing in a particularly nasty clash with the Ghanaian team. The history of women's football is not left out, as Dr. Boer takes a chapter to trace its origins and rise. Nigerian female footballers have come a long way from being treated as side novelty attractions to being successful on the international stage, even more so than the male teams. In Nigeria, football is an important game, and this is an important book. First, it is history, a thorough examination of the history of this sport in Nigeria and how the game has shaped Nigerian pride and consciousness. Secondly, it is a reminder that national pride and love for this great country are things that can and should be intentionally cultivated. We are never stronger than when we let ourselves forget the lines of religion, tribe, language, and ethnicity that divide us. Thirdly, this book serves as an inspiration to us all. Extraordinary stories lie in our past, and if we do not seek them out and tell them, they will be lost forever. Everyone should read this book. Avid footballers, casual fans, public servants, and school students. Everyone. There is no doubt that anyone who reads this book will benefit immensely from the insights and knowledge set forth so lucidly here, and marvel at the thrilling and exhilarating stories that had heretofore gone untold. A book about football in Nigeria has been written, and it is indeed a story of heroes and epic. Thank you.
I think you should make that louder for such an exhaustive book review. Thank you so much.
Good evening. I know you guys are wondering what I'm doing here, but Wiebe personally knows that I would have been playing for Nigeria as a defensive midfield and for Arsenal Football Club also. But I picked music because I felt that the football industry, Ogasa, it's not a height thing. There's the guy called, there's somebody called N'Golo Kante. Anyway, it's a pleasure to be here. And Wiebe was actually an African history professor of mine in Calvin College many years ago. And he really challenged, you know, we're a bunch of African students, we're young, we thought we knew everything about the problems of Nigeria, and I remember one session that we had where he divided the class up into the people of color on one side and the Caucasian kids, mostly American, a few Canadian kids. And he had us argue, make a case for slavery and for colonialism against each other, but switching roles, you know, and that's the sort of, challenging the norm, innovative thinking that I've always known with Wiebe. The thing about football is that I also remember being a kid that I remember the Olympics that we won, and I remember coming out on my balcony and just seeing people run up and down, and just the feeling of joy, the palpable feeling of joy and the palpable feeling of being a Nigerian. It was tangible, it was something I could taste, I could feel at that point. It was a sense of pride. And much like football, in fact, football is a great metaphor for the distance between our potential and the reality we have today, But if you don't know where you're coming from, you won't have a good picture of where you're going. And so we're grateful that this white Nigerian, as your passport, has it been, I shouldn't say. that this white Nigerian is here helping us curate a bit of our history to remind us where we're coming from, using this one thing that is a great indicator of what it means to be a Nigerian, of what it means to have potential, and will always remind us how talented we are. If you go in the streets and you go amongst the people, you're going to see thousands of young kids that are sitting there that have potential, that could be playing. There's this one kid I know in Jos, his name is Yunusa, and I remember that every time he loved Manchester United, he'd wear a Manchester United jersey, he would come out, he would, and all the kids in the area would come to watch him. And I used to tell him, I said, man, do you know that you're good enough to play for the real Manchester United? You know, unfortunately the story is, I mean, this is 10 years later, the story is as, you know, thousands of other stories, millions of other stories. So I hope this book is a lightning rod, is a lighthouse in reminding us as Nigerians the difference between our potential and where we should be going. Thank you, Wiebe, for writing this book, and thank you for inviting me. And I hope everybody that was confused when they called my name and asked, what am I doing here, feels a little better about about having me here. Thank you, guys. Enjoy the rest of the evening. God bless.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's all right. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for Emma Ibaga one more time. I think that was really succinct. I think that was a very intelligent submission, and you know, I'm glad that you guys have history. You know, I didn't know you were a teacher, but that's a really nice thing. All right, we're going to. Are you excited?
A footballer, just like MI, because of my love for the game. I belong to about 4 weekend football teams in Lagos, and I managed to play soccer every weekend, sometimes 2-3 times. And I've played soccer with a couple of people in this room, Ibrahim Adamu, I think Shegun Awolowo back in the days at Greg's, and Tilly at Debajo. So as a lover of football, naturally, I'm curious as to how football started in Nigeria. So if you have a copy of the book, I'll take you to page 2, and I'll read from the last paragraph. The Calabar Mission and Football. Football arrived in Nigeria as a foreign cultural import, with at best peripheral linkages to indigenous cultural traditions and meanings.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we keep the volume?
Its actual origins in Nigeria and the exact places to which it first spread are difficult to ascertain, as an activity like football has held little historical importance. It is not unlikely that early British traders, colonial officers, and soldiers played football matches on the shores of Nigerian ports, as they did elsewhere in the world during the mid to the late 1800s. From most accounts, football was first played in Calabar, spreading to places like Lagos, Zaria, and beyond as the influence of the colonial state began to permeate the Nigerian hinterland. The road to Calabar lies through the island of Jamaica, wrote the Reverend James Luke in his missionary memoir. Following emancipation in 1834, Jamaican Presbyterians, inspired by both the Back to Africa movement and the Thomas Boston's call to evangelize Africa, proposed an industrial mission to West Africa. Uninhibited by lackluster support from Presbyterians in Scotland, an Irish minister named Hope Waddell, then serving in the Jamaican parish of St. James, led the effort. Waddell and his team finally received an invitation from Obong Eyamba to come to Cross River in 1844. In 1846, a group of Presbyterian church leaders, both Jamaican and ex-slaves and European missionaries, met at the parish of St. Anne's mission effort to the birthplace of Bob Marley, a century later, and decided to launch a mission effort to Africa. They accepted Obong Eyamba's invitation and thus picked Calabar, a town on the Cross River that had for centuries been a trading contact with Europe, as the site of the mission. Hope Waddell embarked on a small team to Calabar, which eventually became the first capital of the Oil Rivers Protectorate and subsequently the Protectorate of Southern Nigeria. I beg to stop at this point. Please, I recommend this book. Buy a copy and read the book. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's put our hands together for.
And this book is special to me because somewhere I'm fortunate to find that one of my ancestors is mentioned even in the book. It was shocking to find. And guess what? Mr. Ibe just chose to read that part. Obongi Yamba, my great-great-grandfather. All right. Just before I read, I can't resist the urge to take a quick shot at MI. He's right. He's a good footballer. Sometimes I wonder how far he probably would have gone if he was just a little taller. It's not that I'm much taller, you know, because we played together a couple of times. One time, MI and I were 5 and 6 in a match. Central defenders. Now bear in mind that team, apart from having the team we're playing against, apart from having JJ, Amokachi, Ikpeba, also had Kanonwako striking. So imagine the height and imagine the defenders. You know, so you can understand why he didn't get to Arsenal. There are many parts in this book that will make you abandon this reading and run there to get your copies. I will read one of the many. It's found on page 76. The first professionals, Nigerian footballers in England. 76. So here I go. In late 1952, Titus Okere took a step that hundreds of Nigerian players would follow, going to England to play semi-professional football with Swindon Town. Okere, born in Opala village, Owerri province, began playing football at the age of 10 at St. Cyprian's Anglican School in Port Harcourt. He continued his education at Calabari National College and the Okrika Grammar School before being discovered in Port Harcourt by Nnamdi Azikiwe during the 1941 to 1942 ZAC tour, or ZAC tour. By 1943, Okere was playing for Railway in Lagos, and since 1944 had played in every intercolonial and international selection, unless precluded for health reasons. He became the captain of Railway in 1948, leading them to numerous Lagos League and Governors' Cup victories. His departure was a big loss to local football, but set the pace for the continued internationalization of Nigerian football. His brilliance in Nigerian football circles led people to query whether he might be drafted into the English national team. Okere and Nigeria were in for a big surprise, however, when the superstar of Nigerian football was relegated to Swindon Town's 3rd division team because of substandard performances for the 2nd division team. The truth of the quality of Nigerian and West African football had, however, been laid bare as it became clear that one of their biggest stars could initially only manage to impress in the English 3rd division. Perhaps Okere's performance was more indicative of the shortcomings of the amateurism forced on Nigerian players, who could only play for teams run by companies they worked for, their salaries coming from employment, not football. They were also not allowed to advertise products because of the commitment to amateur status. According to Phil Vasili, the retention of strict amateurism in Nigerian football was as much an attempt to prevent the proletarianism of colonial African cultures as it was an effort to guard against the seedier side of the game. Ironically, the same amateurism had largely been abandoned in England itself. The officials of the colonial state wished to maintain an ideal in Africa which was not maintainable in Europe. Of the early Nigerian players who went to England to study and play football, Okere was the only one never to return permanently to Nigeria. According to Railway and UK tourist teammate Justin Onwudiwe, Okere was still alive and well in England in 2001. As was the case with Henshaw, Okere Onwudiwe, Dankaro, and the other early Nigerians who went to the United Kingdom to play football, they could only play with the understanding that they were in England for education in order to keep the facade of amateurism alive. Teslim Thunder Balogun, Nigeria's biggest star in the 1950s, who holds the record for most Governors or Challenge Cup finals appearances, spent time playing in England while studying at the London School of Printing. Balogun, an imposing 6'2" centre forward, originally went to England to play for Peterborough United in 1955, but in 1956 was signed professionally by Queen's Park Rangers, QPR. Contrary to Okere's play in England, Balogun made an immediate impact for QPR, scoring against teams like Watford and Arsenal, before being sidelined by an injury that demoted him to QPR's reserve team and reduced his long-term success in England. In the match against Watford, history was made when Nigerians featured on both sides. Balogun for QPR and Roy Brown for Watford, the latter born to an English mother and a Nigerian father. Indicating Balogun's status as a star, he spent time with Western Premier Obafemi Awolowo, while Awolowo was in England for the Nigerian Constitutional Convention. Balogun returned to Nigeria in 1958 to become coach of the West Regional Football Association, having also taken coaching courses while in the UK. Thank you very much.
Fine reading, business day.
Me just say I'm a journalist. That's what I love to do. I guess you should then have an expectation of what I'm going to do here. I am going to read a very short section of chapter 6. I'm fascinated by its introduction. It starts with a quote from Dr. Azikiwe, who seeks to establish a correlation between participation in team sport and fairness and reasonableness in politics. We are in a very, very deep search for signs of a good leader in Nigeria. Maybe this will help us. Now, I am going to read a section that starts, or that is essentially about football as a metaphor for anti-colonial protest. It is on page 48 and then rolls on to page 49. Football continued to grow in importance within Nigeria, at times being used as a metaphor for political protest. A 1949 political cartoon showed that football players representing the National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroon's NCNC and the Nigerian youth movement had the ultimate objective of scoring against the imperialist goalkeeper, even though they played different styles. Another such example was a 1953 political cartoon, an accompanying article describing a football match between two teams, Nigerian team and opposing team. On the Nigerian team were Zik, Nahoro, Mbadiwe, Awolowo, Akintola, and other players in quote, considered to be among those fighting for Nigerian independence. The opposing team was made up of senior colonial officials and men like Amadou Bello, who were considered to be among those working against the realization of Nigerian independence. Competing for the Freedom Cup, the match commentary described various moves by the pro-independence group towards the realization of their dream as plays within the game. The outcome was that the Nigerian team won 10-1.
If you were following, thank you so much, Mr. Frank. All right, I think we've gotten to the climax of this event, if you will, where we present the book and introduce story of heroes and epics, the history of football in Nigeria. Please put your hands together for Dr. Wiebe Boer. As we now call on our special guest, His Excellency the former Governor of Cross River State, Governor Donald Duke.
Thank you very much. May I ask the Managing Director and Chairman of Shell to join me and his boss to join me in this. You get it? And is, you know, prefaced by saying it's a history of football in Nigeria, but it is indeed in its totality a history of Nigeria. It talks about the evolution of the country alongside the sport. And both the sport and the history are, at the end of the day, intertwined. It's with great pleasure that we, Mr. Sagi and I, present this book. Ah, there you are. I thought we'll be able to spot you with your grey afro. Well, we want. No. I'll lose my ticket immediately. Well, Bankole is a publisher. You heard him earlier. It's with great delight that we, all three of us, including the author himself, present this work of love. It's a work of love for Nigeria to each and every one of you. Congratulations.
Donald already did the honors, so I will just start my voice. Wiebe started working for Shell recently, and I was going to ask myself where he found the time to write this until I realized actually it was his PhD thesis in no less an institution than Yale. So I'm not surprised about the quality. I think it's been variously said that this is essentially the history of Nigeria told through football. And Wiebe, I've known in the short time he's been with me to be a man of many parts. I have to say this completely beat me. You fooled me on this one. So I really want to congratulate you for this work. I really want to urge my colleagues from Shell here. You heard the injunction of the publisher earlier. We need at least 2 copies from each of you, just to encourage Wiebe to write another one. Well done. Congratulations.
President of the Nigerian Football Federation, Amaju Pinnick. Let's put our hands together for him as well. Okay, clearly, we have to do the natural thing.
The book on the right of our history for us. The Managing Director, CEO of Shell, SPDC, His Excellency, the former Governor of Cross River State, my brother, Awolowo, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very sorry for coming very late. At least now, sorry for me too. Right now we are going through a lot. We are trying to tidy up every other thing leading to the World Cup so that we can actually have the quality preparation that we are giving to the boys so that they don't have any excuse. But I'm very proud of my friend and brother, Weber, that in spite of his very touring background, has decided to put something together, you know. Some of the favorite books that I read are all written by people from outside the shores of Nigeria. One of my favorite books is that of Max Cylon, Soldiers of Fortune, Nigerian Political Culture, and now we have the history of Nigeria. I read this book and I feel it's quite authoritative. And on the part of Nigerian Football Federation, we're going to adopt it as one of the official historic books of Nigerian football. We are going to liaise with him and get as many copies as possible so that we'll take to all the state's FAs. so that people will be properly guided and educated on the historiographic literature of Nigeria football. We are very happy because football in Nigeria is rising again with your support, and we believe that, like I told Mr. President last week, that our dream is our vision. You must have a vision. When he was the governor, he had a vision. And in Shell, my brother Osage has a vision. You must have a vision as a leader. If you don't have a vision, there's no way you'll be able to accomplish anything you set out to achieve. We started from zero, but today we are 60% self-funding, the Nigerian Football Federation. In the next 2 years, I make bold to say it. You can quote me any day, anytime. Nigerian football will take care of itself and take care of other federations. And that's the dream. That you can see we have demonstrated in spite of the very tense atmosphere. But the intensity is not as a result of hatred for us, the administrators. It's as a result of the love Nigerians have for the game. You cannot afford to make mistakes while running football in Nigeria. Everybody is a coach. Everybody is a coach. Entry my car, no, that player is not good. Why didn't they use this player? This player is faster, is this. No, listen, if you don't bring trophy, don't come back. Oh. Listen, that's how charged the atmosphere. But we are excited about it because it's a positive development. And let me also see this opportunity to educate us about our kids. I believe you will be very happy to hear that. At least Nigeria don't take first on one thing, have you? You know, there's a strategy behind it. Trust me, there's a major strategy behind this, our kid thing, you know. It's not just sitting down and saying we want to produce kits. Some people have the opinion that we should have given it to a Nigerian company. Yes, we want to give it to a Nigerian company. But we don't want them to slide and instead of a Wobi, to show Wobi. There's a lot of technology behind this jersey, trust me. There's a lot of technology. It's not just sitting up, going to a manufacturer and building a jersey. No. There's a lot of technology. In fact, there's part of the jersey is what's called the Technorino brand. The Technorino shirt is a very well engineered shirt. When you are warm, it gets cool. When you are cool, it gets warm. I don't think we have that technology yet.
Are you sure? Our sisters in Benin.
So what I'm saying is, now we've been able to market and make Nike feel that they are superheroes. So when we are going to negotiate, at the first point, when we were negotiating with Nike, we negotiated at the weakest point. Because nobody wanted to partner with us. Adidas had left every company. The first day I sat in my office and I actually appended my signature to $25,000 to down buy just for Nigeria. I wept. And that was the turning point. I said, no, this jersey, I will not only get it right, I will make people look for it. 3 years ago, I said it. And when we eventually got Nike, I mean, we've been on this thing for the past 2 years. It's like the ladies, if you know what the immense Beckins bag is, you can't just go to the shop and say you want to buy Beckins. That's the idea behind the shirt. Look for it. So when it comes out in torrents, we'll be pocketing money in torrents. So that's the whole idea. And in future, when we are also negotiating, we're also looking at partnering with the export-free zones and getting Nike to come and open a factory in Nigeria. That is the whole idea. It can be 1 year, it can be 2 years, it can be 10 years. But with the population that we have, 180 million people, I think it's a plus for any company to come to Nigeria to invest. As quality as this shirt, they are not produced in America. They are not produced in the UK. They are produced in a third world country like Nigeria, but they have their own quality control. Same they can bring here and we do. The only thing that we can keep doing, borrowing the words from Obama, is to always believe that we can do it. Is to always believe that we can do it. When the Nation Cup draws came out, I think Algeria, Nigeria, Cameroon, Zambia, people gave up hope and said, let's wait for 2022 World Cup. Because for so many reasons, apart from the sporting reason, the political reason, Cameroon, I had to. Zambia, Kalusha Boya. Algeria, rah. No Nigerian. Sheyi and Shehu came to me and said, President, you have to get to the CAF executive. It will be tough, but we'll do it. Today, I'm not just only a member of the CAF executive, but in all modesty, one of the most powerful men in Africa, you're looking at here. In all modesty. And that is it. And it has impacted hugely. Nigeria is now globally recognized. Yesterday, I was talking to Justice Phillips, and she told me, I'm going to Russia tomorrow. I'll be in Russia for 5 weeks. She's the only member representing Africa in the FIFA Ethics Committee. A.U. Mustafa, SAN, is the president of the CAF Appeals Board. Ifa Yumba, a member of the organizing committee for African Nations Cup. Shehu Diko that just left here is a member of the stakeholders committee. And we have 10 Nigerians in very strategic global committees in world football because of my entry into the global football politics. So Nigeria is big. It's not because of how much you pay me. You people should understand the importance of being a Nigerian. And that is this shirt, Naija. When Nike was saying Naija, Naija to them means people that are rugged, people that cannot be stifled, people that cannot be trampled upon, people that the more you look, the less you see, people that there is the good, the bad, the ugly, people that there is quality and quantity. And that is what Nigeria is. And that's why I love this country. Nobody loves this country more than me. I'm telling you. Very proud of this country. And my brother Shago, he will tell you, once you are in a leadership position that you interface with other global leadership, the immediate respect you have as a Nigerian is there. As soon as you get into this is a Nigerian, somebody from Belize will stand up for you. Somebody from South Africa will stand up for you because you are a Nigerian. Let's not deviate. Once again, I really want to thank you. I want to congratulate you, and I want to tell you that I will support you from here. I'm off to the airport, and I'm off to Russia. I'm expecting everybody in Russia. Whether good or bad, we should support the Super Eagles. We must support the Super Eagles. It's very, very important we support the Super Eagles. Let me tell you why. We have a team that can make a decent and a prominent presence in this World Cup. We have a team that will be favorites for the next Nations Cup. We have a team that will be favorites for the next World Cup. We have a team that will be favorites for the 2026 World Cup. It's a system that we have developed. It's a model we've developed, and that's why today we have the youngest team going to the World Cup. Thank you very much.
But we will still echo what most people have said. Safe trip to Russia, but please don't come back if you don't come with the trophy. we actually mean that. I mean, after investing 40, how many thousand? All right.
My sport actually in Jos, I was actually a long distance runner. I was the 1991 5,000 meter champion for Jos. So that's my, so I'll write on the history of long distance running in Nigeria, which will be about 10 pages long. No, actually there is another project in the works. The collaborator is actually in the room with me, but I won't tell you who it is. But it's another story of something really important to Nigeria. And this is Steve Gukas, for those who don't know. He's going to make the movie of the book, by the way.
I'm sure just hearing about it for the first time. Okay. All right. So, second question.
Thank you, Doctor.
Was a much broader story about, it included everything about football and also polo, cricket, and so many other things. And he helped me whittle it down, because obviously when you're the author, you want every sentence to stay, because you remember the blood and the sweat that went into finding that information. So he helped me to kind of dispassionately get rid of a lot of the details. I would say that the one chapter that I really wanted in there but didn't end up was something about sport in the service of colonialism. Because the colonial state actually used sport to try and influence and own and divide the nation. And a very specific example of that is actually in the way that they set up towns in northern Nigeria. So there would be the GRA, where all the colonial officials would live. There would be the Sabungari, where the non-northerners, the Christians in those cities would live. And then there would be the areas where the indigents and mostly Muslims would live. And they would actually use football fields and other sports fields to divide those communities, physically divide them. So it was actually an example, a very cunning and subtle way that they actually use sports to divide us. But thankfully, the Nigerian masses took to football and basically, came from the GRA, Sabungari, and everywhere else and played together on the same fields. Interview that okay, let me talk about two interviews. There was one interview that I never did because actually the father of one of my classmates in elementary school in Jos, John Duncaro, who was the first sort of football star from the north. We grew up, he never told us this. Even his kids did not know that he was a star. And so he passed away before I started doing the research. And so the sad thing on that one is this is a man that I knew as sort of an uncle growing up and never had the chance to actually ask him about this part of his life. So that's the one I missed. The interview I loved the most was when I met Captain, or Skipper, as they called him, Etim Henshaw, in Calabar. And it was in 1991, before we had Facebook and all this stuff. So it was actually, you had to do real research and investigation to figure out where he was. So I found him and, spent several hours with him interviewing him about that part of his life. And it was, you could just see this old man coming to life talking about these stories. But he had the feeling that he was never really recognized for it. He also told me about conflict that they actually had in the team, which was never actually revealed at the time because he was from Marine and most of the team were from Railway. And there was actually a huge competition between them. And so the Railway guys felt someone from Railway or Titus O'Carey should be the captain, not him. And so there was actually a lot of sort of bad blood in the camp. And that was something that, because of that, after the 1949 tour, he never played for Nigeria again. And so this is a man who, in the 1940s was a massive football star, an amazing player, and sort of defined his life and career, but was never recognized for it and actually had to end his career in a bitter way. So I just think that as Nigerians, as the, NF, Amaju Pinnick is here. I think the Football Federation and others have to recognize these men as heroes, the men and women as heroes, and really bring their stories out so that everyone knows about what they contribute. Interview that okay, let me talk about two interviews. There was one interview that I never did because actually the father of one of my classmates in elementary school in Jos, John Duncaro, who was the first sort of football star from the north. We grew up, he never told us this. Even his kids did not know that he was a star. And so he passed away before I started doing the research. And so the sad thing on that one is this is a man that I knew as sort of an uncle growing up and never had the chance to actually ask him about this part of his life. So that's the one I missed. The interview I loved the most was when I met Captain, or Skipper, as they called him, Etim Henshaw, in Calabar. And it was in 1991, before we had Facebook and all this stuff. So it was actually, you had to do real research and investigation to figure out where he was. So I found him and, spent several hours with him interviewing him about that part of his life. And it was, you could just see this old man coming to life talking about these stories. But he had the feeling that he was never really recognized for it. He also told me about conflict that they actually had in the team, which was never actually revealed at the time because he was from Marine and most of the team were from Railway. And there was actually a huge competition between them. And so the Railway guys felt someone from Railway or Titus O'Carey should be the captain, not him. And so there was actually a lot of sort of bad blood in the camp. And that was something that, because of that, after the 1949 tour, he never played for Nigeria again. And so this is a man who, in the 1940s was a massive football star, an amazing player, and sort of defined his life and career, but was never recognized for it and actually had to end his career in a bitter way. So I just think that as Nigerians, as the, NF, Amaju Pinnick is here. I think the Football Federation and others have to recognize these men as heroes, the men and women as heroes, and really bring their stories out so that everyone knows about what they contribute.
Point that the Nigeria Football Federation, the first meeting happened in 1930. I 1933. Kulisholaja has also written about that a lot. I want to ask Mr. Philip, what is the role, what is the NFF doing to correct this impression of 1933?
Our newspaper invitation in August 1933, inviting people for the meeting the next day, and then the newspaper articles about the meeting and the minutes of the meeting. It actually happened just down the road in what was then the health office on Broad Street. It's now a local government office. It's just down the road here. That's actually why we're having the event here. So I'll bring those to you, and then it can be verified completely and totally.
All right, that's fantastic. All right, so we have
right direction for the future. So what key theme do you think stands out from the past?
Casually asked Wiebe up to this if the story of Ismail Amabu.
So that one, it's hard to answer that, but I think it does go to say that, you know, when the team is playing, nobody actually really pays attention to who's from where. There's no federal characters, just, you know, who's the best. However, as someone who you know, grew up in Jos, was born in Jos, you know, I would like to say that the captain, second captain and third captain of the Super Eagles all were raised in Jos, but none of them are from Jos. So I think that's actually the beauty of it. None of them are indigents of Jos, but they all grew up there. And that again sort of is the tale of what football means for Nigeria. Okay, when is part 2 coming out? The post-colonial story is a lot more complicated because then okay, he said everybody is a coach, but then everybody is a historian. And so I decided to end it in 1960 when basically nobody knows whether I'm right or not. So I'm going to move into another topic, and maybe you can write that one. And then the last question was another really tough one. So what was it? What we can learn from the past about football? I mean, I think it's a long-term journey, and I mean, I think what was beautiful about football was that it was introduced from outside Nigeria by non-Nigerians. There's no indigenous word for ball in any major Nigerian language. In Hausa, it's balo, which just means seed, it's a round seed. In Yoruba, it's bolu. In Igbo, I think it's just ball. So clearly, those aren't indigenous words, right? And so football did not grow on something that was already there. It's completely new, yet over time, Nigerians made it their own, indigenized it, and used it actually to fight against those who brought it to them. And so I think I have no idea what that means for today in football, but I think it just means that football can continue to play a role that even if our politicians try and divide us, football will always still bring us together. But we need to find a lot more things in Nigeria that bring us together, because that's not enough. But at least it's a foundation and it's something to grow on.
ladies and gentlemen.
Because he now trains at the Teslim Balogun Stadium with the Barcelona Academy. So he and my other sons are now the football stars that I never was. So congratulations.